This was part of a 3-year investigation involving federal, state, and local agencies. The indictment says Hells Angels members committed violence to maintain and enhance their place within the gang.
In today's video, we are going to delve into one of the most infamous and feared outlaw motorcycle clubs in the world, the Hells Angels, focusing on the infamous Sonoma County chapter. We will be discussing 2 of the many shocking crimes committed by Hells Angels Sonoma County that resulted in life sentences for 3 of their leaders. FBI Special Agent in Charge Robert Tripp said, "These 3 Hells Angels members were the most violent of the dozens convicted in this investigation. They used violence and fear to intimidate our community, but their brutality and disregard for human life have now earned them life in prison." Join us as we uncover the details behind these crimes and explore the inner workings of one of the world's most feared outlaw motorcycle clubs. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, also known as Hells Angels or HAMC, is a globally recognized outlaw motorcycle gang. Considered one of the 14 dominant outlaw motorcycle gangs in the United States, the Hells Angels are part of the infamous 1% clubs, symbolizing the 1% of bikers that don't follow the rules. They don't follow laws. They don't answer to anybody. The organization is structured into chapters known as charters, which operate regionally under the Hells Angels. In the United States, these charters are divided into West Coast and East Coast regions. While each charter retains a level of autonomy by establishing its own set of rules, they must still abide by the collective guidelines known as the Hells Angels World Rules. Becoming a member of a Hells Angels charter typically involves a progression from being a hang-around to prospect for at least a year before attaining the status of a full patch member. Full patch members are distinguished by the iconic 3-piece patch on their vests, featuring the club's name, Hells Angels, at the top. The center patch has the death head logo, a skull with its mouth stitched shut, and below the death head is the bottom rocker, indicating the state the member is from. Only full patch members are allowed to wear anything that displays the Hells Angels name or the death head. Members can also earn tags that they wear on the front of their vest, including the Filthy Few tag, which members earn by committing acts of violence in support of the club. This objective includes violence towards rival outlaw motorcycle gangs, members deemed to have disrespected fellow Hells Angels, as well as those kicked out of the club in bad standing, and anyone who disrespects the patch in public, all under the guise of protecting the club's honor. Hells Angels Sonoma County is a charter that operates in Sonoma County. Each charter adheres to a standardized leadership structure, typically consisting of roles such as president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and sergeant-at-arms. The president serves as the head of the charter, while the sergeant-at-arms acts as the enforcer, responsible for using violence, if necessary, to maintain respect for the charter and discipline charter members who fail to follow both charter-specific and world rules. Chapters hold mandatory weekly meetings referred to as church, where members discuss charter business and vote on charter issues. Operating on a one-man, one-vote principle, most decisions made within the chapter are determined collectively. Prospects, however, are not allowed to participate in church, and instead are expected to provide security during these meetings, particularly by keeping an eye out for rival outlaw motorcycle gangs and law enforcement. During church, it was very common for all Hells Angels Sonoma County members to share information of each other's criminal cases and potential criminal liabilities. The progress of members' criminal cases is closely monitored by the Hells Angels Sonoma County. Testimony from Steve Verhagen, a former prospect turned confidential informant, revealed that when he was a prospect, Hells Angels Sonoma County's president and sergeant-at-arms had shown him the PACER report containing his case history. He had even confronted him regarding the discrepancies found in the report. Additionally, incarcerated members were distinguished by the BHC, or Big House Crew designation. Raymond Folks, also known as Ray Ray, held pivotal roles in Hells Angels Sonoma County, serving as both former president and former sergeant-at-arms. Raymond was president of Hells Angels Sonoma County at least up until 2008 when he went to prison, and he continued to have significant status in the charter long after that. Despite his incarceration, Raymond continued to have significant influence within the charter, and he called the shots from prison. He even received moral and financial support from Hells Angels Sonoma County during his incarceration. Raymond's motorcycle was still proudly displayed at the clubhouse during his incarceration, and he continued to actively participate in club activities by joining meetings from prison. He had a reputation for being a badass, a rock star, and Mr. Hells Angel. One member emphasized that nobody controlled Raymond. He had the highest level of respect and was highly admired, was regarded as somebody extremely powerful within the club, even during his time behind bars. He further stated whatever Ray needed, Ray got. And if that's because he was a member of Sonoma County, or just a Hells Angel in general, that's Ray, and Ray gets what he wants. Notably, Raymond's presence elevated the status of Hells Angels Sonoma County significantly, because he was known among other Hells Angels. Russell Out, a founding member of Hells Angels Sonoma County and its president for 15 years before Raymond Folks, remained an influential member of Hells Angels Sonoma County. Known by the moniker Chief, Russell is hailed as one of the most active Hells Angels ever, often spending time in the Hells Angels Sonoma County clubhouse and even living there at times. Christopher Ranieri, a former president of the Boston Hells Angels chapter, maintained strong ties with both the Hells Angels Sonoma County and Fresno chapters. For example, celebrations were held for Christopher when he visited both clubhouses. The Hells Angels Sonoma County Sergeant-at-Arms, Russell Lyles, visited Christopher frequently and even considered naming his son after him. Christopher wore a Sonoma tag and had a Sonoma County Death's Head tattoo on his forearm. Jonathan Nelson, the most recent president of Hells Angels Sonoma County, was highly respected. He often used violence to address perceived slights against himself in Hells Angels Sonoma County. He had significant respect and close friendship with Christopher Ranieri. Brian Wendt, former president of the Hells Angels Fresno chapter and the Hells Angels West Coast Sergeant-at-Arms, was known for using violence in carrying out his role as Sergeant-at-Arms and had a close bond with Jonathan Nelson. Brian was at the Hells Angels Sonoma County clubhouse frequently. Joel Silva was a member of Hells Angels Sonoma County known for his reputation as a bully, causing problems at the Sonoma County, Fresno, and New Hampshire clubhouses. The tight-knit relationships between Hells Angels Sonoma County members and those from the Fresno and Boston Hells Angels chapters were notably strong. Joint motorcycle rides or runs were a common occurrence between Hells Angels Sonoma County and the Fresno charter. Rival outlaw motorcycle gangs are viewed as enemies by Hells Angels members. Members are expected to attack enemies on sight. Government witness Joseph Hardesty revealed that he was recruited by the Hells Angels for what they called big game hunting and small game hunting. This referred to the task of hunting and killing the Mongols, which they considered big game, and hunting and killing the Vagos, which they considered small game. Joseph recounted an incident when he was riding with Hells Angels Sonoma County members, including Joel Silva and Russell Out, and saw an individual whom he believed to be a member of a rival outlaw motorcycle gang. Upon identifying the individual, Joseph took out his gun and fired multiple shots in his direction. Following the shooting, Hells Angels Sonoma County members commended his actions, hailing him as a real Hells Angel. After a Mongols member killed the president of the San Francisco Hells Angels Sonoma County members were instructed to look out for Mongols and attack them on sight. Failure to comply with this directive resulted in loss of status within the Hells Angels. For example, a full-patch Hells Angels Sonoma County member failed to report seeing a Mongol license plate within Hells Angels territory and was demoted to a prospect. Steve Verhagen recounted his involvement in 2 runs to Arizona, during which Hells Angels Sonoma County and related chapters were considering the possibility of killing rival gang members. After a Phoenix Hells Angels member was killed by a Mongol, Hells Angels Sonoma County members traveled to Arizona for the funeral. Instead of going through the most direct route to the funeral, the group made the decision to travel through Mongol territory. He stated that this was intended to make a statement. We were showing force. This decision was also to let them know that we wouldn't be intimidated. Before leaving, Jonathan Nelson delivered a speech warning about potential attacks by other motorcycle clubs, acknowledging that there was a very good chance that we might not come home from it. Steve stated that the speech made me feel prepared for war. I was getting ready to ride into battle. He felt on several occasions that dying as a Hells Angel prospect would be worth it based on the emotions that are instilled in you to become a good Hells Angel, and that he wanted to have that honor. Troy Conte, a former member of Hells Angels Sonoma County, was sleeping with Raymond Folks' girlfriend. In November 2016, after Raymond found out about the affair, Troy received a text message stating that all Hells Angels Sonoma County members needed to be at the clubhouse for a meeting. Members of the club were already there, and 20 minutes after Troy got there, Raymond arrived and confronted him about the affair. Raymond struck Troy in the face. Despite attempts to leave, Troy was dragged back inside by Raymond and Russell out, and the assault continued. Eventually, the assault stopped for a bit so that Hells Angels Sonoma County members could vote on Troy's membership within the club. After they voted to revoke his membership, the beating continued. Troy endured a brutal beating that involved being hit with a baseball bat, being bullwhipped and pistol whipped over the course of 4.5 hours. Troy was also held down so Raymond could run a tattoo gun across his face. Raymond left amidst the assault and came back later. Troy said that the worst part of the assault was when Jonathan Nelson pistol whipped him in the face. The night Troy was brutally assaulted and removed from Hells Angels Sonoma County, Raymond left amidst the assault in order to sexually assault Troy's wife Michelle in a disturbing act of intimidation. Amid the violence at the clubhouse, Raymond called Michelle and told her to come to the clubhouse. Once she arrived, Raymond took her to a secluded area. He told her if she doesn't do what he says, Troy is going to get worse than what he already has, and if she says anything to anybody, then he'll come after her. Raymond then forced Michelle to perform fellatio on him before she returned home. Following this, Raymond returned to the clubhouse to continue the assault on Troy, callously recounting what he did to Michelle. Prior to Troy's return home, Raymond went to their house and attempted to assault Michelle again in their bed. However, Hells Angels Sonoma County member Josh Johnson, who was bringing Troy home after the assault at the clubhouse, arrived at the house before Raymond could follow through with the sexual assault and persuaded Raymond to leave. Michelle then rushed her injured husband to the hospital. After the brutal assault, Troy required an overnight stay in the hospital due to the severity of his injuries. Medical records described Troy as a risk for sudden clinical deterioration and life-threatening injuries. Medical records showed that he suffered facial fractures, including those affecting the orbital walls of his left eye. He also needed plastic surgery to remove the tattoos from his forehead after Raymond ran a tattoo gun over his face. Even to this day, Troy still has vision issues stemming from the incident. The day following the assault, Michelle disclosed to her husband that she had been sexually assaulted by Raymond. Despite usually avoiding dealing with law enforcement, Troy encouraged Michelle to report the assault to the police, a typically forbidden thing to do by a member or associate of the Hells Angels. Michelle followed through with Troy's advice, leading to Raymond's subsequent arrest. Approximately a year later, Michelle was on a freeway and ran into Hells Angels Sonoma County member Brian Burke. Brian formed his hand into the shape of a gun, pointing it at Michelle before directing it towards his own head. Michelle interpreted this as a threat against her life for reporting the sexual assault to the police. Joel Silva held the position of sergeant-at-arms in the club and had been a member for 5 years when he met his tragic end. During June 2014, Joel attended the annual Laconia Motorcycle Week in New Hampshire alongside fellow members Joseph Hardesty, as well as charter members Brian Wendt, Robbie Huff, and Tio Bueno from the Fresno chapter. While at the event, Joel and Joseph spent time at the Laconia Charter Clubhouse, where they were reckless and causing problems. Joseph stated that they were using meth, tearing the clubhouse apart, terrorizing the prospects, and picking on all the East Coast members. Joel engaged in this type of behavior very often, which was causing tensions between him and the Hells Angels. At one point, a conflict arose between Joel and Boston Charter member Sweeney, who was the right-hand man to Boston Charter President Christopher Rainieri. Sweeney was upset with Joel for moving marijuana across the country, while Joel was upset and jealous that Sweeney had taken a Hells Angels chain from him and given it to Joseph. The situation escalated when Joel threatened Sweeney and said that he wanted to kill him, asking for help from Joseph and Robbie. This threat was a significant problem. Joseph said, "You can't kill other Hells Angels, and you're talking about killing a member over a chain, just cause your feelings are hurt." When the news of Joel's threat eventually reached Brian, he was very upset and told Christopher. The Fresno Charter gave Joseph an ultimatum. "You're going to stay here with Joel, or you're coming with us. Pick a side." Joseph ultimately opted to align himself with the Fresno Charter, as he saw them as more powerful. Joseph stated, "If I stayed with Joel, that meant I was going to face the same fate as him." He also believed that Joel had made a big mistake, and it wasn't the safe choice to stay with him. Subsequently, Joseph went with the Fresno Charter to Christopher's home in Boston, where Christopher and Brian had a private discussion regarding Joel's threat. Upon rejoining the group, Christopher and Brian said that Joel had to go. Following this meeting, Joseph and the Fresno charter returned to California. The following day, at Joseph's home in Antioch, a discussion took place among Hells Angels Sonoma County President Jonathan, Brian, and several members of the Fresno charter about the need to kill Joel, ultimately deciding to proceed with the plan. They decided to kill Joel because he was causing too much problems, beating too many friends up, the threat to Sweeney's life. He was causing too much drama within different charters. Jonathan also perceived that Joel was challenging his status as Hells Angels Sonoma County president, dating back to a confrontation in February 2013 when Joel struck Jonathan in the forehead. Jonathan was sensitive about his status as president. In the summer of 2014, Jonathan stated that he had problems with Joel, that he didn't like the way Joel was bad-mouthing him, that Joel went back east and said some stuff about him about being president. Jonathan then told Troy Conte, "I'll have that guy killed." Following the meeting in Antioch, Jonathan was responsible for planning Joel's murder. A couple of weeks later, at a meeting in Berkeley, Jonathan tasked Joseph with executing the murder. In their discussion, Jonathan specified that the murder needed to happen in Fresno due to the charter's access to a crematorium. Initially, Joseph agreed to kill Joel and even relocated to Sonoma in an attempt to calm Joel's growing fears about interacting with the Hells Angels. Joel knew that everyone was mad at him, and he became increasingly paranoid and started to withdraw from the Hells Angels. This relocation was important for the execution of the plan because Joel was scared and was avoiding places where he believed he could be killed by the Hells Angels. Joel told a friend, "If the club says I'm running from them, don't believe it." Additionally, he told his stepfather, "If the club says I ran, I didn't run." After spending more time with Joel, Joseph didn't want to be involved in the murder. Nonetheless, the plan continued without him. During this time, Joseph maintained regular contact with Joel until he received a text message letting him know that it was taken care of and not to text Joel anymore. Subsequently, a party was held at the Fresno clubhouse, and when Joseph arrived, Brian gave him a ring that Joel had received from the Richmond charter. There is a club rule that property from one charter goes back to that charter if someone is killed in the club. As Joel had gotten the ring from the Richmond charter and Joseph belonged to the same charter, Joseph knew that the ring being returned meant that Joel was dead. During the party, Brian also disclosed the details of the murder to Joseph and details of his attempt to cover up the murder. Brian revealed that they lured Joel to the Fresno clubhouse for a fight and to grab a couple pounds of weed. The fight was meant to give Joel the impression that Brian wanted to squash the beef, which is a typical resolution method within the Hells Angels. The weed was just added incentive because Joel was dealing. Once Joel reached the clubhouse in Fresno, Brian instructed him to retrieve marijuana from a cubby under a stage. While Joel was bent down picking up the marijuana, Brian shot him in the back of the head. Brian told Joseph that Joel's truck was off in a field or desert somewhere and the body was never going to be found. Joseph believed that his body would never be found because it was probably taken to a nearby crematory with a large incinerator. This assumption was based on the fact that before the murder, Robbie pointed out the crematory to Joseph and said, "This is where we're going to bring him." Cell phone data from July 16, 2014, the day after Joel's disappearance, showed that Fresno charter member Merle Hefferman got in touch with Levi Phipps, the manager of California crematory linked to Yost and Webb Funeral Home in Fresno. Merle texted Levi, "You better be there." After receiving the message, two men arrived at the crematorium, and they brandished a gun at Merle. They moved what appeared to be a body from their vehicle to the crematory incinerator, and then arranged for another body to be cremated. Merle later warned Levi to keep quiet. Cell site data also placed Robbie near Dos Palos on July 16, 2014, close to the location where Joel's burnt-out truck was discovered on fire in a remote area later that day. The fire captain who came across Joel's truck stated that the fire was likely deliberate arson. After Joel was missing for a while, his family began reaching out to members of the Hells Angels Sonoma County, asking for information about his whereabouts. Joel's wife visited Russell Out's apartment and was asking him about where her husband was. After she left, Russell told Steve Verhagen, "Little does she know he's not coming back." None of the Hells Angels approached Joel's family to help them to try to locate him. Members also shunned Joel's family members in public. Roughly 4 days after his disappearance, Joel was voted out of the Hells Angels Sonoma County. Hells Angels members emptied out Joel's old tattoo shop, taking items such as his personalized hard hat and an antique door. About a month after Joel's disappearance, Hells Angels Sonoma County members visited his home and removed all materials related to the Hells Angels. During this time, Joel's daughter, Silva, spotted a Hells Angels Sonoma County member riding her father's bike. Law enforcement discovered Joel's dog tags at Russell Lyles's place. Subsequently, investigators found that Hells Angels Sonoma County member Damian Cecina had a motorcycle with various parts resembling those on Joel's bike prior to his disappearance. On June 22, 2022, a jury found Jonathan Nelson, Russell Out, and Brian Wendt guilty of conspiracy under RICO, as well as conspiracy to commit murder under Vicar and murder under Vicar. In addition to these charges, Jonathan Nelson received convictions for assault with a dangerous weapon to aid racketeering and use of a firearm during a crime of violence. All three were sentenced to life in prison. On May 17, 2023, a jury rendered guilty verdicts against Raymond Folks and Christopher Ranieri. They were convicted of conspiracy under the RICO Act. Moreover, Raymond Folks faced additional convictions for assault with a dangerous weapon in support of racketeering and witness tampering. Meanwhile, Christopher Ranieri was found guilty of conspiring to commit murder under Vicar. At the time of making this video, both are still awaiting their sentences. Christopher Ranieri faces a statutory maximum prison term of life. Raymond Folks faces a statutory maximum prison term of 60 years. Merle Hefferman pleaded guilty for his part in the violent crimes as part of the racketeering conspiracy and was sentenced to 48 months in prison on October 19, 2023. On November 17, 2023, Russell Lyles pleaded guilty to involvement in a racketeering conspiracy and assault and was sentenced to 63 months in federal prison on August 31, 2023. On October 7, 2022, Damian Cecina pleaded guilty for his part in the violent murder and was sentenced to 52 months in prison on January 19, 2022. Thank you for watching.